Hello, I'm Ryan, and welcome to my channel Analyze This, Mr. Bond, where I discuss the adventures of James Bond 007 and dig for what lies beneath the surface. And today we're going to be digging into something a little different. I've been a little under the weather recently, and that's put me in a contemplative mood, and I've wanted to address something that I've been thinking about for a long time. And that subject is negativity in the Bond fan community. Where there's a lot of love for something, where there's a lot of passion, there is always strong emotion. And you can certainly see that emotion in the Bond community. If we look back as recently as No Time to Die, it'll come as no surprise to any of us that that stirred up some strong emotions. In fact, when that movie came out, it was like an atom bomb went off in the Bond community. Folks loved it, folks hated it, folks landed somewhere in the middle, but you could really feel people responding to that in raw emotional ways. And that's carried over even now, years later. There's this sense that we're still processing what that movie represented. Strong emotions are not new to the Bond fan community. I've been around the Bond community long enough to have seen old disagreements, like the rifts between the Connery fans and the Roger Moore fans, or the folks who complained when Pierce Brosnan was Bond that he was too soft and weak, and they really wanted the return of the Connery Dalton toughness, and the controversy, the vehement controversy when Daniel Craig was cast in Casino Royale, the uproar that came with that, the craignotbond.com event, and the subsequent battles that ensued in Bond fandom. Passion is not something to be sneered at. It's something to be celebrated. The fact of the matter is, we're all here because we love the character of James Bond. We all have deep emotional attachment to James Bond, or we wouldn't be spending so much time thinking about him, talking about him, watching these movies. That passion is great. I'm actually very deeply thankful to my experience of James Bond. I wouldn't be the person I am today if I hadn't been introduced to the Bond films when I was, in my early adolescence. It has imprinted itself on me and has shaped my life in small and large ways. And I'm really grateful for that. And I know many of you feel the same way because I engage with you all the time and hear your stories. That is to be celebrated. And negative emotion also has its place. Where there is passion, where there is conviction, there can also be disagreement. There can be disappointment. And it's important to process those emotions that we also have to recognize that negative emotions, when they really start to take a hold of us and control us, they can move from something that is a necessary part of processing life to something that is eroding our sense of joy. And I see that sometimes. I I have no real skin on the game as to whether people like the Daniel Craig era, the Pierce Brosnan era, whether they like Roger Moore, whether they love or hate No Time to Die. But some part of me feels sad when I see a comment on one of my videos that says, the James Bond series is ruined because of No Time to Die. Because it feels like their potent emotional response is overwhelming all the other joyful experiences that they've had with this character over the years. They wouldn't care about James Bond if they hadn't had so many positive memories associated with James Bond. The fact that they feel negative emotion about Bond now is because of the positive associations they've had in the past. And we can't control the world around us. We can't control what happens to James Bond. Many of us would love to run Eon Productions and get to dictate what the future of the James Bond franchise is, but we don't have that control. But we can control our own emotional responses to the world. So while we may not be able to dictate the course of current events or future events, we can at least process them in our own way. I think there are ways in which we can look at these negative feelings about aspects of Bond that we don't enjoy and still claim those positive memories we have. It can feel overwhelming when you've anticipated a new Bond movie, when you've anticipated a new chapter, that something there is so pivotal that it erodes what you felt about the prior experiences. But those movies are still there. Your memories and experience with them are still intact. If a new Bond actor is cast that you don't get along with, that doesn't diminish the experiences you've had with prior Bond actors you connected with. If a Bond movie comes out and does something that you find unacceptable, it doesn't change the fact that the movies you loved are still there. They're still available for you to watch. They're still available for you to continue to have that relationship with. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing response. In many cases in life, we're tasked with sorting through experiences and taking the good and leaving the bad behind. And I think we can do that with anything in life, especially art, where we have the opportunity to sift through our experiences of art, take what's useful to us, and leave the rest behind. At the end of the day, James Bond is an imaginary character. When we experience the adventures of James Bond, we are entering into an imaginary space. James Bond does not exist. A movie only has the power that we give it. A movie is not something real. It is an opportunity to engage in imagination. A movie is a set of images and sounds that invite us to engage in an imaginary exercise, to imagine the adventures and loves and, horrors of all these different fictional characters, of which James Bond is just one. These movies are only as powerful as we let them be. While movies can be good or bad, their impact on my life is in some ways up to me. I have the power to say this movie is significant or this movie is insignificant, depending on how much of my imagination, my intellectual life, I devote to it. No Bond film could be so bad that it ruins your positive association with the Bond film that you like, unless you make the choice to give it that power. They could have made a version of Casino Royale I was entirely uninterested in. But I still would have been that 12-year-old boy who fell in love with the Connery Bond films, who was absolutely mesmerized by the Brosnan Bond films, who went to see The World Is Not Enough in the theater and was just absolutely so delighted to be there with his dad, seeing a James Bond adventure up on the big screen. Those memories are really powerful, and no matter how bad a future Bond movie could be, those memories that I have are untouchable, and I'm always going to be connected with this character because of those, and I'll always have a connection with the Bond fan community because of those. And it is my personal mission to really channel those positive energies. I process the negative, but I try to dwell on the positive, because the positive is what gives me momentum going into the future. It's what powers my creativity. It's what powers my enthusiasm. If I dwelt on the negativity, I would lose my appetite for experience. It would diminish my curiosity about the world around me. It would limit my ability to engage with the people around me. So by plugging into those positive memories, I'm better able to not only connect with the art that I love, but connect with the friends that I love and be able to discuss with them from a place of comfort and stability and confidence. And that's my encouragement to you all is look to the positive, not for the sake of James Bond, but just for the sake of yourself. You owe it to yourself to be able to love what you used to love and not let anybody take that away from you. Thank you for indulging me in this somewhat unusually introspective video, and I will happily catch you all in the next one.